Hello, everyone. Good day to you wherever you are in the world, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to this Sensations English monthly webinar for teachers, returning after a short break while we were at a lot of conferences. But we have an exciting collection of webinars coming over the next few months and a slightly new look to them as well. I'm Adam, the Education Director at Sensations English, and today we are delighted to welcome our very own Gerald Smith, who will be speaking on using digital resources in English exam preparation courses. Just a reminder that if you are watching the webinar live, a CPD certificate will be sent to your email 24 hours after the webinar has finished. If you're watching the recording, please make your own note of your professional development activity. The webinar will last around an hour and will include time for questions at the end of Gerald's talk. They'll be asking you to get involved a little bit during the talk as well. Sensations English is focused on helping English teachers develop their skills. We're delighted to be hosting regular webinars for teachers to support quality evidence-based practice. You can view our previous webinars on the Sensations English webinars website, including our monthly webinars and our special series of themed webinars on using videos in ELT and using global authentic resources in ELT as well. These resources all come with the recordings and the slides from the session. We hope they'll help you to develop your own practice and expand your use of authentic resources with your classes. Sensations English lesson resources are a great new advance in ELT content. We are delighted to offer teachers hundreds of video and news article resources, all graded at 5 levels of English and all with ready-made learning activities. They make video and news accessible to learners at all levels and hassle-free for teachers. There are over 600 video and article news resources, giving you access to the most up-to-date content to use with all of your learners on any topic. Our Sensations English Schools edition includes subscriptions for all your teachers and students and a digital teacher gradebook, which lets you organise your students into classes, set and monitor tasks, and create reports to review your learners' progress over time. To start using this great resource in the schools edition, just go to the link that is on the screen, or which I'll put in the chat in a moment. But now to tell you a little bit more about Gerald, our speaker today. Gerald is an English language teacher and a journalist based in Glasgow, Scotland. As a journalist, Gerald has written about L1 discrimination, teacher professional development, and online tutor marketplaces for ELT. Gerald currently teaches in Glasgow and on the International Summer School for Teens, and lives on a houseboat with their partner and 2 cats. Gerald, once again, thanks for being here, and over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. It means a lot. Yeah, please use the chat box if you have any questions throughout. But today I really want a lot of engagement from you guys. I'd love to hear any of your ideas, thoughts, dreams, hopes for the future, whatever. It's all welcome. So yeah, today we're going to talk about using digital resources in exam prep courses. So I'm going to start off with a picture of this guy, this elderly man. This is my father. And my first conference about English language learning was with him, and he did a presentation about a revolutionary new product that should be used in English language classrooms. And this was really groundbreaking at the time. The product was YouTube. Oh my gosh. I'm sure you guys do not use YouTube in the classroom, right? But it's funny looking back because now it is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. And for me, that was a great way to get into English language teaching. Digital resources have really made my classes more fun, more engaging, and more useful, I think, for my learners. So tell me if this sounds familiar. I'm teaching an IELTS prep class. I need to stick to the book. You can tell me in the chat box. For me, yes. Thank you, Aya. Aya, if I'm saying it correctly. This is how I felt last year. Was it last year? Yeah, last year I was teaching a test prep course for IELTS. Fantastic. And I felt like I need to prepare my students, so I'm going to have to use the book. This is the only structured way to do it. But 2 weeks in, and my students were flagging, they were not having fun, and they were not engaged. So what did I do? I tried using digital resources, and it really revolutionized the classroom. This is a term called washback. When we go into an exam prep class, we're thinking about the exam so much that it affects how we interact in the class as teachers, but it also affects the students, and it also affects how we prepare for the class. It can be positive and it can be negative, okay? Sometimes it motivates learners, right? They want that score, they want to go to university. But oftentimes for teachers, it's really negative, and it can lead to anxiety, embarrassment, guilt, shame, anger, a lot of those heavy emotions that I think a lot of us have felt. Um, Digital resources help mitigate that, and we'll talk a lot about that in the coming slides. We're going to take a look at the current landscape, how people are teaching uh, exam prep courses now, the concerns with using digital resources, but also the potential benefits. Then we'll be talking about balancing the course books with the real life relevance of digital resources. And we'll talk about the principles for effectively integrating those digital resources into our classrooms. And finally, we'll go through some sample activities, and I'll ask you your thoughts of how you would integrate them, how you would integrate some digital material into your classrooms. Okay. What exams am I talking about? I'm talking about IELTS. I'm talking about TOEFL. Talking about the Cambridge TKT exams. But to be honest, my main expertise is in IELTS. Still, there's a lot of overlap between these exams. I need some information from you guys, though, first, before we go into more information about this. I want you to think about, what do learners need from English exam preparation courses? And I want you to follow this QR code here to go to Mentimeter, and we'll see what information you guys can give us. Okay, we've got 3 great examples right away. Models and examples. I'm guessing we're thinking of models of the test, of test takers and how to do the test well. Yeah, good. Exam task practice, absolutely. So you're going to have to do some specifically test prep questions, even practice tests. Yeah. Entrance, I'm not sure what we mean with that. The target score, yeah, they're looking for a specific score so that they can get into university or get a job, or apply for a visa. Yeah, confidence, communication strategies. Wow, I love it. Yeah, I think that's something that people overlook all the time with this, is that a lot of these tests, especially like IELTS, really want to focus on communication rather than maybe specific vocabulary or something like that. It's really about communication. Great. And yeah, they want to go to university. Yeah. Yeah, my colleague Adam just said that maybe the entrance means something like a test that they need to pass in order to go to university. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That's what a lot of them are there for. Great, guys. You all know your stuff. Fantastic. Let's go on and we'll do one more Mentimeter. What resources can we offer these students? We know what they need. Now, what resources can we offer them? Okay. Yeah, great. So we can offer them classes where you get good interaction and feedback. You can offer them a textbook. Yeah, most schools do, I believe. Yeah. Sample tests, great. Yeah, those are fantastic. You know, it's great to see exactly what kind of stuff is going to be on the test. Yeah, vocabulary rich resources. Whoa, very nice. Build their confidence. Yeah, I think a lot of us have students who actually their language capabilities are very high, but they just need someone to encourage them, to build them up. Great. Yep. Websites, sample tests, digital sources, learning strategies. Great, guys. Yeah, and a lot of this comes from, right, us teachers. We're like a human resource that really can never be replaced, I think. So this is fantastic, that human interaction that we offer and human feedback. I think that is probably the best thing that we have. Um, so great, guys. Great answers. Thank you so much. So let's go on and focus what you guys just talked about on this digital material that we can offer them. What do I mean by digital material? Well, I mean video. I mean a lot of authentic material that is online or on computers or phones. And I also mean gamified activities. Okay. And all of these we're trying to use to increase engagement with the students. Um, that's the first and foremost thing. So what's great about video is that it's context forward, right? It's not like when you're reading a text and you have maybe one picture. That's all the context you get is the picture. Instead, the video has constant visual information as well as audio. So you have a great paratext. You get the title of the video. You get a lot of information about what it is before it happens. Um, so yeah, you also get that auditory information and fantastically important familiarity. So the students already have a high video literacy. I would say most of our students. Of course, there's some that aren't quite like that, but they probably have a higher video literacy than, let's say, uh, literature literacy, reading literacy. Then I'm talking about authentic material. These are real world situations, often news stories. They're human interest stories. What I mean by authentic material is the material that the story is the focus, not necessarily the language. Um, yeah. When we're integrating digital resources, a lot of us are concerned because we think it might not be relevant to the exam. We think that it doesn't show enough progression in the students, whereas a textbook has chapters. So if you get from chapter 1 to chapter 10, it can make it seem like you're ready to take the test. And people feel like it doesn't integrate, right? They feel like digital resources don't integrate with the textbook. But there are ways to mitigate those problems, and the benefits far outweigh those concerns because you get that high context language use, authentic and interactive material. You connect to learners' real interests and experiences and motivations that go beyond an exam. And so you're not just helping them for the exam, you're also helping them for their university career, their professional career. And of course, it mitigates that negative washback that we talked about. Um, when you introduce a digital resource, though, you always have the problem. Maybe a student says to you, why don't we have exactly test prep material? And you might be thinking this yourself. In my mind, the difference is you have to think about something like soccer. You have to have an analogy. So when you have a soccer player, tell me this, is running soccer? No. But do soccer players run? Yes. So digital resources act as this kind of practice um, for training and really improving their skills into the exam later. Okay. Um, it's practice. So let's work on that balancing course books. So course books provide familiarity, structure, and progression, like we kind of talked about. However, there's a huge gap between that and the practical language needs that these students have. They need to communicate, and they have different contexts to communicate. The course book is very limited in that way. They need everyday academic, professional, and personal contexts. So what can help bridge that gap? Digital resources. Sorry, and teachers, okay, and us. Uh, Digital media has a lot of great information. It talks about people's interests. It's got that context forward stuff, the experiences, but it's also timely. Okay, so it's from recent time, especially when we're doing news-based things like Sensations English. It's not from 5 years ago, like a lot of published material. It's quite often from that month, that week. So that really helps. We're going to watch a short video to show how this could be relevant to learners nowadays. The video is about a dump in Chile where clothes have gone. All the fashion industries dump their clothes here, basically. And it's relevant to students' lives because we all wear clothes, right? We're all buying clothes. Uh, and yeah, you can see maybe get the gears turning how you would use this in your test prep class.
This is Chile's Atacama Desert. There are millions of tons of unwanted clothes here. They're bad for the environment. Unwanted clothes arrive in Chile from Asia, Europe, and the US. Business people sell some of the clothes in South America. But 39,000 tons of clothes go to the desert every year. Many of them are synthetic. The clothes will be there for 200 years. The government's worried about fires.
Looking at that, instantly students can think about their own contribution to this visual pollution that is happening in Chile. And it brings great international experiences into the classroom in that way. One of the great things that we also need to talk about is computer assisted language learning, which is also called CALL, C-A-L-L. Digital resources are great for this because students are practicing on computers or on phones. And oftentimes now tests are increasingly on computers, right? So they need to practice that. But also beyond the exam, they need digital literacy. So here are some skills that they get to practice. Hypertext literacy. Hypertext literacy means that you're thinking about sources, not just from one place, and thinking about, fact checking, for example, about finding more information about something using Google or other search engines and other websites. But then you can hold in your mind, okay, one person made this great video essay on YouTube about this thing, but another person made a video essay on the same topic and they had a completely different perspective. So you get a multiple authorship and multiple vocality that you wouldn't have otherwise. You know, a textbook is written by a few writers together collaboratively, but you get many, many more voices on the internet and through digital resources. There's an interactivity, it's virtual. You might be using audio, video, text, animation, and images. So that's the multimedia literacy as well, which is going to be useful for your students forever, throughout their lives. So let's look at some of those aspects that apply to Sensations English. We have that it's virtual, none of this is paper. It's using text and audio. It's using interactive games. And you can compare and contrast articles and videos to other things, right? So you get an article here. It's an intertextual relationship to this one. They're both about phones, but they're different. Here's some principles for effective integration. We really have 4 principles, okay? We want to focus on HOTS, which are higher order thinking skills. We want to build contextual language awareness, develop lexical storage, and encourage autonomous learning. Let me go over what HOTS is first. Basically, these are the skills that are very hard, are generally challenging for teachers to teach, but digital resources do a good job of engaging higher order thinking skills, which are analysis, evaluation, and creation. Okay. So when you introduce a digital resource, you can introduce questions like this. How does this relate to something else? Is it similar or is it different? Then you might evaluate, is this thing right? Is it good? Are there any issues? And then you might want to create something with the class. Create a podcast, a skit, an essay, a debate. You might collaborate on something, and you might even make a mock test, right? Right away, these 2 are probably most useful for us in testing, writing essays and creating mock tests. So let's take a look at an example. So this article is about a French village that banned mobile phones in public. You could start off the class talking about analysis, you know, before even reading or listening to this. You could ask your students, where is it not appropriate to use your phone? And they might talk about the movie theater, a church, a religious building. They might talk about at dinner. After reading it, you might discuss, do you agree with this ban? Why not? And then you might create something. I like podcasts. I think those are great ways of engaging students. So you could create a talk show style podcast discussing this ban. Or you could have an essay responding to a test prompt. For example, some people believe extensive smartphone use has had a negative effect on social relationships. Do you agree or disagree? Right? So you're kind of melding this digital resource with a test prep issue. Now, the wide variety of topics really helps. Notice that some of these are about education and work, some are about fashion or ecology, some are about animals or the environment. That really helps because a lot of our tests deal with those same issues. Okay, so for contextual language awareness, this is my idea. We're going to do a little bit of math of how this works. You have the context forward material from digital resources. plus gamified digital activities, plus practice to help gain better vocab retention. Okay. So context forward material, we've done it. Video and articles. Okay. You've got a great picture, a great title. You know what the topic of the thing is beforehand, and you might even have some ideas of what it's going to talk about before it happens. Then afterwards, you get great vocab that is attached to something real. Okay. So you get this smartphone ban, and then from that that paragraph that we just read, you could get things like picturesque town. Okay. Now the word picturesque you might have seen in like vocab lists for IELTS or other things, but until you have it attached to something like a real place, it doesn't really mean anything. You get nice collocations like attracted attention. You have things like scrolling in public. And you really focus on ideas, right? You might think about the real goal of the thing, meaningful social contact. Yeah, so language then is attached to something real. That's what's great about this type of material. This is one about Argentina's economy, about some women who were dumpster diving because it's cheaper to get food that way after an economic crash. But look, you have this great phrase, Argentina's inflation has risen to 114%, while food prices have skyrocketed by 117%. I mean, this is great language for numbers. Okay, really nice. Really nice. Okay, gamified activities. You can focus on individual things like parts of speech and vocab. You could focus on things like listening or writing, sentence structure, or even the info or the order of information. Okay. Digital materials, gamified digital activities like this are great for practicing those kind of skills. And then you can work on your lexical storage with like things like Quizlet. That's like flashcards, digital flashcards. You could take practice tests. And you could, of course, do more creative tasks like we talked about. Autonomous learning. I spoke about autonomous learning in the last webinar we did, but autonomous learning is basically when learners are in charge of their learning journey. And digital resources are fantastic for this because you're putting basically all the tools they need to do well on the test in their hands, right? So digital resources give learners agency. They're designed to be user-friendly, right? Some textbooks can be a bit confusing, but with digital resources, they're supposed to be designed to be easy to use. And they help learners follow their own interests, right? Beyond the confines of a book. And, you know, you can scroll through it sort of like Netflix, looking for what you are interested in, what resonates with your experiences, which is a very nice thing to be able to do. You could give learners choices to help promote their autonomy. So instead of saying, this is the video we're doing in class today, instead give them 4 options, right? And maybe they're all on a similar topic. For example, all of these are attached to each other because they're about success, about personal ambitions and goals. So you could give them a choice like that. But you could also keep it even more open than that. 1 second. You could give them an open choice to research just a topic. So you could say, okay, we want someone to research ecology. This person is really interested in seaweed farms. Okay, they're going to research that. Then you could let them create a small list of useful sources, just using skimming skills, right? They go on the internet, they're trying to find good sources to research their topic more broadly. Then choose a couple of them to read, and you might discuss them as you go or let them just take notes about the topic. And you might have them then create a productive task, like giving a presentation, writing an essay, writing an article. Those are the kind of things that you can do with digital resources that you really couldn't do just from one source. And this is great for a flipped classroom approach, right? So if you want students to do things outside of class, this is a great way to do it, right? You give them that as homework. They're prepared then for in-class activities. Okay, we're at our final thing, sample activities from Sensations English. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys a clip from one of the videos, and I want you to think how you would use this video in your exam prep classroom. What part of a speaking activity would you use it for? For example, if you were teaching IELTS, would you use it for part 1, part 2, part 3, all of it? Or how would you use it? Okay. So put that in the chat at the end of the video, okay? Right. First, though, let's just watch.
The concrete grey jungle of Baghdad's been transformed into a colourful cityscape by Iraqi artist Widjan Al-Majed. Painting large murals over the blank walls around the city, Al-Majed is regularly found by herself working late at night with just her paints and brushes for company. In this traditional society, she met with some opposition and even abuse.
I stay late in the streets, sometimes until midnight, 1 a.m. or even 2 a.m. People worry because women are not supposed to stay out this late painting. Also, people say things which I have learned to live with. Over time, I grew to make peace with them and they began to accept me as I began to accept them. They got used to seeing a woman painting.
Baghdad's infrastructure suffered a 13-year international embargo, followed by the 2003 US-led invasion that toppled dictator Saddam Hussein's regime. This led to years of sectarian violence. The art project was the idea of the city's mayor, Al-Rahman, to help in bringing the city back to life.
The idea was to bring beauty to the city and move art to the streets in order to get rid of the grey colour in the streets, which is the colour of the dust that has accumulated over the last 40 years due to devastation and destruction.
So think about how you would use that. What part of the test would you use this video for? What part of the test? Or how would you use the video? Oh, I sent that the wrong one. Sorry, guys. How would you use it? I'll give you just a minute or two to think about it. Don't drink some water from my IELTS bottle. Another thing we could think about is, would you use this for productive skills or would you use this for receptive skills? So would you use this to practice speaking and writing, or would you use it for practicing listening and reading for the test? Okay, Faith says, yeah, using it for productive skills. Productive skills. Generating ideas, absolutely. Yeah. You can see that you'd be watching the video. Afterwards, you can talk with the students, or they can talk with each other, talking about art, right? Or they could talk about history. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. These types of videos especially lend themselves very well to productive skills tasks. I'll give you an example of how I would use this. Yeah, Adam brings up a great point. You could also use it for IELTS Part 2 with the speaking cue card, right? You could ask students to respond to a couple of the ideas that were in the video, right? And talk about them for 1 minute. Sorry, 2 minutes. What am I saying? Here's how I might use it in class. You might do a pre-watch activity about art. Then you would watch the video, and afterwards you discuss what was the video about, who made the project and why, and do you like the murals, why not, right? So you get a little bit of interpretation there. You get some factual information that you can get from the video. It's important to think about who made the thing, I think. Who made the project. And then I would make them practice something for the test. So I would get my learners to alternate role-playing a test taker and an examiner. And you could do this in a sort of IELTS speaking part 3 idea, having the test taker ask, having the examiner ask the test taker about their opinions on art and government art projects, right? You could think about, is it right to spend all this money on art when, of course, there are people who are living in poverty, right? That's always interesting. Yeah, exactly, Faith. You bringing up that good point. So really, it could be used for that writing. Yeah, that writing as well as the speaking. But I think it works best in the more interpretive parts of a test, you know, where you have to express yourself, where you have to communicate ideas. Yeah. So then you might have something like the article we talked about before, the French village bans on mobile phones. You could use it for writing, like Faith, you pointed out earlier. You could do the same method, right? Read the article. What is it about? Why did the town ban phones? How? And do you think this ban is positive for society or negative? Why or why not? Then get them to do practice, right? Write a response to an essay prompt. which could be something like this. Some people believe that smartphones are destroying social interaction today. Do you agree or disagree, right? A classic sort of IELTS prompt. Now let's focus on receptive skills, because as we pointed out, it's better for productive skills. It's easier to integrate for productive skills, but you can use it for receptive skills, absolutely. And I do this all the time. So if you're like, have these two material, there's an article, a video, you could jigsaw, right? You could jigsaw a lesson. Getting learners to read one group of learners reads the article, one group of learners reads the script for this video, and then you can make some quiz creation out of that. A lot of these tests have different question types. Some have just multiple choice. So for IELTS, it's very important that learners understand you have true, false, not given, note completion, matching, short answer. It's not just multiple choice, right? So if you introduced these in the beginning, then you split the class. One is reading this article, one is watching the video or reading this transcript. They might have some questions to answer based on these types of questions. And then you could have the learners choose their own resource and create a quiz using those types of questions, right? So it's great for practicing the exact thing. But there is another way you could use it, right? You could also use it as a skimming or scanning activity. So you can also practice those skills. How about digital games? Remember, we briefly mentioned these, but there's so many different types, right? Different ordering. You could use it for vocabulary or parts of speech, listening, all of that. How do you think, how would you use these digital games in a classroom? And do you think they're useful for an exam prep class? Let me know in the chat box. Another question we could ask is it more useful to use these games inside of class or outside of class? What do you think? Are these better for really during class, or are they better as homework, as preparation, and extra practice? What do you think? Yeah. That's a great point, Faith, exactly. So some students might find that they are useless because it's not exactly specifically the exam practice. Yes, it's not exam questions. Of course, we can bring up the analogy of, you know, football and running, but some students don't want to listen to that. So yeah, we get that. Yeah, and Faith, you also say it's better outside the classroom. Yeah, to revise the lesson and of course to practice a bit more. Yeah, I like that. Great, I'll put up some other ideas here. So yeah, exactly. It could be in class, projected for the entire class, or you could do competitive teams, right? So you have one group that is answering, other group is answering, and they're competing for points, right? Or you could do it individually as well. You could do it on their phones, right? I think that's such a heads down activity. I wouldn't really want to do it myself. You want engagement, right, between students. Or you could also do it individual computers or shared computers. But like Faith pointed out, I think that these games work best outside of class. They work really great as pre-class prep. You know, if you have lower level students who are going to take these tests, they probably need a lot of practice with vocabulary and parts of speech. But the higher up students might also need a lot of practice with spelling and listening. So they're great practice for getting exactly the right word or really honing in on the individual skills they need. It's a great way to practice CALL, the thing that we talked about, computer-assisted language learning. This is empowering the students. It's letting them practice something that's important beyond the test, but also for the test because you have computer-based tests now. You get the practice grammar, yeah, the individual skills I just talked about. But it's also useful for you because now you get to analyze their strengths and weaknesses, right? So that's one of the great things about using this type of resource. I'll show you an example. You know, if I have a student, you can see they did not do very well on this last homework I gave them. They really were struggling with constructing sentences, with what's the word you hear. So maybe they didn't understand how to do the activity, or maybe the level is a little bit too high. Maybe I need to get, I need to go down a level to maybe B1, and we'll try it again. And I think this kind of grading is really important because the test material is always kind of at one level. And sometimes that's actually too high for students to even understand what's going on in a text, right? We often have students who are not B2, but they're reading a B2 level text. So if we can meet them halfway and let them practice, gain that vocabulary they need first with these graded resources, that can really help. Okay, last, my summary. So digital material, this helps with the washback effect, okay? It makes us more engaged, makes the students more engaged, and it helps make the class not just focused on an arbitrary test, but also focused on actual language and real life. Remember, running isn't football. Test prep isn't just testing, all right? We are gaining skills and practicing skills. When you use digital materials, you need to focus on HOTS, you need to focus on context, lexical store development, and building learner autonomy. And finally, digital material is a great inciting topic for test practice. Okay, that's a fantastic way to start a class or get learners into the subject matter of a test. Okay, thank you very much. I'll be around for some questions now. Thank you guys for sitting through this, and yeah, I'll answer anything that I can. As long as we have time, Adam. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gerald, for that amazing talk. Lots of interesting ideas there. And Faith, thank you very much for all your input as well. Now, if anyone has any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box or in the chat box as we're towards the end of the session. Right now, there aren't any questions, but going back to something that Faith said, just for a minute, Gerald, fun, but some students find it useless simply because it's not included in the real exam. when we're thinking about exam preparation and those skills that we're developing in learners, how can you bring those activities which are not quite the identical to the exam activity itself, how can you bring those to students in a way that helps them to see, I can transfer this to the exam?
Well, that's a great question. And yeah, it's one of the biggest struggles, I think, with introducing any material in a test prep course, not just digital. Here, I'll stop sharing because we can just talk. Yeah, and I think one of the best ways to do it is focus on the subject matter of the test. You know, a lot of these tests, especially IELTS, have you talk about everyday stuff as well as some bigger ideas. So if you're going to bring in a digital resource, link the subject matter, right? And that way it's kind of leading in together. You know, you're going to talk, you might have an IELTS test that talks about art, you know, and government's role in art projects. So you can use a material that talks about that. Yeah, and so that's one way of doing it, the topic. The other one is using that analogy I just talked about, you know, reminding the students we're not just going to be taking practice tests in class. We're training your language skills so that you'll be ready for the test. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well, that there are two ways of preparing students for exams. I'm talking very simplistically. One is do lots of practice tests, which helps learners feel very secure that I'm doing more practice tests and everything. But the other one is teaching learners the skills that they need to build into those tests. And when we're writing course books, for example, which are focused on exam preparation, we want to put in the exam task types. But as we're doing that, you know, it's a selecting or matching activity, for example, because the students will see that in the particular exam, and that goes down as low as, you know, the Cambridge starters, movers, flyers, and stuff like that. But at the same time, you're thinking about how to grow the students' language store, to develop their fluency and develop their accuracy within the language that they're using as well. So lots of things there.
And
Still,
honestly,
no one's got any questions. Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that, yeah, I think, you know, those practice tests also can be quite demotivating, honestly, for students, because they'll realize sometimes they just don't have the skills to take the test yet, right? And they'll think, I'm going to fail this completely. And obviously we want them to have a realistic expectation, but if we train those skills up, they will score better, right? So yeah.
And one of the ways that you can do that is by not introducing the test straight away, but building those skills through the way in which you're linking it to some resources such as these that you're helping students to build those skills with, and those test taking abilities, and then almost surprise the students with, okay, so here's the test, you know, introduce test tasks, and then make them realize that they already know how to do those because you've prepared them for those activities already. So it becomes something comfortable, something that you're bringing to the test rather than something that's raising negative affect because it's part of the test. So yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even just thinking about topics, right? We don't talk about what type of tree we love, you know, or what kind of thing is really interesting to us, or talk about a memory when you felt you know, unsafe or something. You know, sometimes you get weird questions like this. And so if you give them material that engages all these different topics, they'll be prepared to answer them. Yeah.
I think the American expression is to turn on a dime in those situations. You know, you're presented with this strange question that you've never thought about before in your life, but the practice at doing that kind of activity before allows you to be more able to respond to that strange question that you get, and a wide range of resources that you're asking students to reflect on will help them to be more prepared for that kind of strange question when it comes up.
Yeah, because it does. There'll always be some sort of surprise. You're not an expert in everything, but yeah.
No, exactly. Well, just before we finish, if there are no other questions, and feel free to write any, feel free to write any in the chat. Just to let you know that we've got more webinars coming up, so watch out for the next one coming up at the end of June. And also just a reminder about the Sensations English Schools edition, which you can use with a class or with a whole school, using it with multiple levels, so that whether you've got differentiation within your own classroom where you need to use materials at different levels to support different learners at different stages in their progress, or whether it's different classes that you've got and you can use the same resources with different classes because of the different levels. And also just to say, follow us on our socials and keep up to date with us, see the latest resources on sensationsenglish.com, and check out more of the webinars that we have, the recordings for those, on the Sensations English webinars website as well. That's all from us this time. So I'd like to say goodbye and thank you for watching wherever you are in the world, and have a good day, morning, evening, night. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you all.